Welcome all. Uh, Here to present you George Orwell, a great character who wrote Animal Farm. So I'm going just to be analyzing it, and I'll be presenting the character of one of the greatest Boers, and that is Napoleon, in the topic called The Rise of Napoleon. So in this novel, we see the ruling class of pigs taking over Mr. Jones. And among those pigs, we see that there is one pig that outcompetes the others, and that is Napoleon. So welcome all. This is the rise of Napoleon. In chapter 1, we see this fierce-looking Berkshire bull. He's frightening, and he's one of the trio of the pigs that transform old Major's theories into animalism, a school of thought that incites animal rebellion. Though he lacks speaking talent, he is well known for insisting on his own agenda. So Napoleon is a man who used to insist on his own idea, on his own ways. So he liked to be more empowered than all the pigs, though all the ruling class of the other animals. So chapter 1 concludes by the pigs taking over the old Major's theory of animalism. Remember, old Major had a dream of transforming the farm to be owned by the animals. And it was to be taken from Mr. Jones, who was the owner, but due to his dictatorship through overworking the animals, the old Major had the idea of taking a rebellion to overpower him, and they take over the farm. So chapter 1 ends by the animals getting that thought and taking it into action. Moving on to chapter 2, here this was after the death of the old Major. The animals begin to organize themselves under the direction of the pigs, particularly two Boers by the names of Napoleon and Snowball. Though Napoleon, a hawk with a reputation for having his own way, has a very fierce-looking appearance, and no one can even question him because of the fierce-looking appearance. So we end chapter 2, whereby the three Boers, Napoleon, Snowball, and Squealer, they take over the responsibility of transforming the farm into animalism. Moving on to chapter 3, Napoleon and Snowball virtually never agree. They will really never agree with each other. They conquer the pigs, never have all the apples. And Napoleon claims that he will nurture and educate the puppies that Jesse and Bluebell had. So in this case, Napoleon decides to take the puppies. These were to be trained in order to support Napoleon, to always be on the side of Napoleon. So Napoleon was a very clever guy. He knew what would be coming next, so he had to organize an army that would defend him. Moving on to chapter 4, the most vocal participants in these tributes were Snowball and Napoleon, and Snowball typically prevailed. Though Napoleon urinated over the Snowball's drawings for the windmill, after a heated argument they had over whether to build one. In this chapter, Snowball tries to bring in the idea of building the windmill, but Napoleon neglects this idea because he thinks He's the one to bring the ideas that have to be put in place. So, we end this chapter by Napoleon and Snowball starting their arguments whether to build a windmill or not, though Napoleon is always against that idea. Moving on to chapter 5, Molly frees after being petted and stealing sugar from a neighbor. The discussion between Snowball and Napoleon continues, with Snowball in favor of the windmill and Napoleon in favor of food production. Napoleon seizes power after driving Snowball from the land with the help of his trained dogs. Remember, Napoleon had already trained his army, the puppies. Now they are dogs. So they are now giving him what he needs. And they are assisting him chase Snowball. Because Napoleon knows that Snowball is a very intelligent bull. And anytime he may take over the whole farm. So he decides to chase him away from the farm. In chapter 6, Napoleon sentences Snowball to death and provides the traitorous killer with a bushel of apples in exchange. He then makes fervent speech in which he persuades the animals to repair the windmill despite the laborious work required. He shouts, "Long live windmill, animal farm lives." Imagine in this chapter. Now, in this chapter, Napoleon comes in that he's the one to bring the idea of building the windmill after chasing Snowball from the farm. So Napoleon had a jealous character, never wished to be under anyone. So he thought he was above everything. Moving on to chapter 7, Napoleon utilizes Mr. Whymper to inform the human world of the animal farmers' sufficiency. The chickens put on a show after being informed that they must give up their eggs, and it ends when they run out of the food Napoleon has denied them. Moving on to chapter 8, after the new windmill is finished in August, Napoleon sells Frederick the stockpile of wood, and he tries to pay with a check. However, Napoleon demands money, which is granted. Napoleon then sentences the treacherous person to death once Whymper discovers that Frederick's currencies are fixed. So Frederick was a great character representing the human in the other world. And this Frederick, in this animal farm, he represents the German leader, Adolf Hitler. So we see that this so-called Frederick, he brings the currencies that are fake, and Napoleon decides to put this fellow to death. Oh, what will happen in chapter 9? I think Frederick was killed. Let's move on. Moving on to chapter 9, Napoleon is chosen as the new president after the animal farm is eventually declared a republic. So in this chapter, the animal farm is declared a republic, and Napoleon is the first president of the other animals. Boxer puts all of his effort towards erecting the windmill after his hoof has healed, up until the day that he passes out from a lung condition. Moving on to chapter 10, and this is the one that closes Animal Farm. Here, when the animals move into the window to see the animal farm, they no longer distinguish the animals from humans. So in this chapter, the pigs are happier, fatter than ever. Albeit no animal has truly reached retirement. Napoleon was now a mature bull of 24 stone. Squilla struggled to see out of his eyes because of his weight. So thank you very much for having followed me. We have seen an interesting part of Napoleon. He tries to empower himself over the other pigs, and at the end, he takes over the republic. Though Squilla did a big part for Napoleon's succession. So the great rise of Napoleon, we also give credit to Squilla. Thank you very much for having followed me. Have a nice day.